If you've ever stared at a bank balance that should have made you feel safe and felt nothing but a colder kind of fear, this story is for you. You've done everything they told you to do. Saved, worked, climbed, and somehow the number keeps moving, and so does the fear. Today I want to tell you about a merchant who owned more than anyone in his province, and a monk who owned nothing at all, and the single question that passed between them one evening on a dusty road. The merchant asked it expecting pity. What he received instead was 7 words that undid 40 years of his life. I'll give you those words soon, but first you need to understand the man who needed to hear them. Before we go further, tell me in the comments, what's the number in your head? The one that, if you finally reached it, you think the fear would stop. Don't overthink it. Just type it. You might be surprised how many people here are chasing the exact same ghost. His name was Tarek, and in the valley where he lived, people said his name the way you'd say the name of weather, with respect and a little dread. He had started with 1 cart and a sack of dyed cloth, and by the time he was 40, he owned 4 warehouses, a fleet of river barges, and a house with so many rooms that he sometimes forgot which ones held his own children. Tarek was not a cruel man. He paid his workers fairly, more or less, and he gave alms at the temple on festival days, more or less generously than his neighbors, which he tracked carefully because Tarek tracked everything. He kept ledgers not only for his business, but for his life. How many days since he had visited his mother? How many bags of rice he had donated last winter compared to the merchant 2 streets over? How many hours of sleep he had lost calculating whether the price of indigo would fall before his shipment arrived? He told himself the ledgers were the reason for his success. In truth, they were the shape of his fear, written down so he could look at it and pretend it was strategy. His house had a room set aside just for the ledgers, shelves of them, each spine labeled in his own cramped hand, going back 23 years. Visitors sometimes mistook it for a library. It was closer to a shrine, though Tarek would never have used that word. He lit a lamp in there every night before bed, even when he was too tired to open a single book, just to look at the shelves and feel, briefly, that the weight of all those numbers meant he was safe. It never lasted past the lamp going out. Every evening after the warehouses were locked, Tarek walked the same road home, past the old fig tree where a monk had taken to sitting at dusk. The monk owned a robe, a bowl, and a walking staff worn smooth by 30 years of roads. He asked for nothing. People gave him rice or fruit when they had it, and when they didn't, he simply ate less, or not at all, and seemed equally at peace either way. Tarek had passed this monk perhaps 1,000 evenings without a single word between them. But on this particular evening, something in Tarek had worn as thin as the monk's robe. He had just closed a deal that should have felt like triumph, a contract that would double his river trade within a year. Instead, walking home, he felt the same hollow drop in his stomach he had felt after every deal for the last 2 decades. The number had gotten bigger. The fear had not gotten smaller. He stopped in front of the fig tree. "You," Tarek said, more sharply than he intended. "You have nothing. Not a coin, not a roof of your own, not a single possession beyond that bowl. How do you sleep at night?" The monk looked up, unhurried, as though he had been expecting the question for 30 years and simply waiting for the right stranger to ask it. "The same way you don't," he said. Tarek laughed, but there was no humor in it. He sat down on the stone beside the tree, uninvited, the way desperate men do, and he told the monk everything: the warehouses, the ledgers, the number in his head that kept moving no matter how high it climbed. He told him about lying awake doing arithmetic in the dark, as though enough zeros might finally silence something that had never once, in 40 years, been quiet. "I have built an empire," Tarek said, "and I am more afraid tonight than I was as a boy with an empty cart. Explain that to me." But what the monk did not answer right away. He simply looked at Tarek's hands, folded tight in his lap, knuckles pale even in the fading light. And this is where everything in Tarek's evening began to shift, though he did not yet know it. The monk asked him a single question in return. "When you were a boy with the empty cart," the monk said, "were you afraid?" Tarek opened his mouth to say yes, of course, and found that the word would not come. He remembered the empty cart with startling clarity, the creak of its wheel, the smell of the dye barrels, the hunger some nights. But fear? He searched for it and found something closer to hope. Urgency, yes. Fear, strangely, no. Remember this detail, it matters later. No, Tarek admitted slowly. I don't think I was. And now you own 4 warehouses, the monk said, and you are afraid every night. So tell me, merchant, what did the warehouses actually buy you? Tarek had no answer. For the first time in decades, his ledgers were useless to him. There was no column for this. The monk let the silence sit, the way he let everything sit, without hurrying it toward comfort. Somewhere behind them, in the town, a bell rang for evening prayers, and neither man moved. I will tell you something my own teacher told me, the monk said, when I was younger than you and twice as afraid. I had come to him with nothing, having given away the last of my father's land after his death, and I expected him to praise my detachment. Instead, he asked me why I had done it, and when I told him it was to be free of fear, he laughed at me. He said, "Giving away land does not remove fear if the fear was never about the land." Tarek leaned forward, the stone cold now under him, his fine merchant's robe gathering dust he would normally have noticed and minded. He did not mind it tonight. This was closer to the answer he had been hungry for than he wanted to admit, closer than anything in 23 years of ledgers. Where was the fear then? Tarek asked. The monk did not answer right away. In the distance, a river barge bell clanged softly, one of Tarek's own, though he had stopped listening for those sounds the way other men stop hearing their own heartbeat. The fig leaves stirred once in a breeze that carried the smell of wood smoke from the town. Tarek realized oddly that he could not remember the last time he had simply sat somewhere and let a minute pass without calculating something inside it. But this is where the monk paused longest, and where I have to pause too, because this is the heart of everything. The 7 words that would undo 40 years of arithmetic. We'll get there in a moment. First, understand what the monk did next. He reached for his bowl, the only possession he owned besides his robe and staff, and he held it up in the dying light so Tarek could see it was empty. Not a grain of rice inside it. He had not eaten since morning. "Does this bowl frighten you?" the monk asked. Tarek shook his head, confused. "It's empty. There's nothing to fear in an empty bowl." "And yet," the monk said, "an empty warehouse frightens you enough to keep you awake until dawn. Why do you think that is?" Tarek started to answer with numbers, inventory costs, contracts, obligations to his workers, and the monk simply waited, patient as stone, until the numbers ran out and something truer surfaced underneath them. "Because the warehouse is who I am now," Tarek said quietly, hearing himself say it for the first time. "If it's empty, I don't know what I'm worth." And this is where everything changed. The monk nodded slowly, as though Tarek had finally arrived somewhere the monk had been waiting for him the entire conversation. "There it is," the monk said. "Not the warehouse, not the number. You are afraid of finding out who you are without it." The words landed in Tarek's chest like something physical. He had built an empire specifically so he would never have to test that question, and here it was, asked plainly by a man with an empty bowl. The evening had gone fully dark now. Somewhere a dog barked twice and went quiet. Tarek asked the question he had been circling for 20 minutes without knowing it. "Then how do I stop being afraid?" The monk was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice had slowed. The way a voice slows when it is about to say something it has carried a long way to deliver. "You already have enough," he said. 4 words, and Tarek felt something crack open in his chest, but the monk was not finished. He held up the empty bowl once more and added 3 more words, and together they made the 7 that would follow Tarek for the rest of his life. "You already have enough. Stop counting." Tarek sat with that sentence the way you sit with cold water on a burn, the relief almost too sharp to bear. 7 words, not a formula, not a number to reach. A permission he had never once given himself in 40 years of ledgers. That merchant is you. Every time you refresh your banking app hoping the number will finally make you feel safe, and it doesn't, because the fear was never about the number. It was about a boy, or a girl, somewhere back in your history who learned that having was the only proof of being worthy, being safe, being loved. So you built your own warehouses. Maybe yours are a savings account, a job title, a house that impresses people you don't even like, and every night you still do the arithmetic because the arithmetic was never really about money. It was about proving you're enough. using a number that was never designed to answer that question. This is what the old teachings call attachment, not owning things, but needing them to tell you who you are. It shows up in smaller ways than warehouses. It's the tightness in your chest before you open an email from your bank. It's the way a single unexpected expense can ruin your whole week even when you can technically afford it. Because it isn't really about the money leaving your account. It's about the story that money was telling you, the story that you were finally safe. And its opposite is not poverty. It is sufficiency, the quiet decision that you are already whole, made before the number confirms it, not after. Enough is not a threshold you cross. It is a stance you take, again and again, especially on the nights it feels least true. Here is what I want you to do. Starting tonight, because a story without action is just a nice feeling that fades by morning. First, tonight, before you sleep, write down 3 things money cannot buy that you already possess. Not gratitude cliches, specific things. The particular laugh of someone who loves you. The fact that your hands still work. 10 more years of mornings, probably. Let the list be plain and true. Second, tomorrow, before you check any balance, any portfolio, any number at all, sit for 60 seconds and finish this sentence out loud. Even if the number is smaller than I hope, I am still... and let yourself complete it honestly. This breaks the reflex that ties your worth to the digit on the screen. Third, choose one thing this week. Not a fortune, just one thing. And give it away without telling anyone. Not for karma, not for a tax deduction, not for a story to tell later. Give it quietly, the way the monk gave his attention to a frightened stranger under a fig tree, expecting nothing back. This is how you practice trusting that you'll still be whole with slightly less in your hands. Picture Tarek now, years later, an old man himself, sitting under that same fig tree at dusk, because he never stopped returning to it. His warehouses still stood. He never gave away his business, never took some dramatic vow of poverty. That was never the lesson. What changed was quieter than that. He still counted his coins, because a merchant must, but he no longer let the coins count him. He would tell his own apprentices, decades later, in his own voice now carrying the monk's weight, that the wealthiest night of his life was not the night his 4th warehouse opened. It was an ordinary evening on a dusty road, sitting beside a man with an empty bowl, hearing 7 words that finally let him stop. You already have enough. Stop counting. Picture the 2 of them there, one last time. An old merchant and an old monk, the light nearly gone, the fig tree's shadow stretching long across the road they had both walked 1,000 times before either truly saw it. Neither man needed to speak. That too was something Tarek had learned to be enough, and if you listen closely, that same sentence was never really the monk's alone to give. It has been passed quietly from teacher to student, from parent to child, from one tired person to another, for as long as people have confused what they own with who they are. Someone said it to the monk once, long before Tarek ever sat beneath that tree. Someone will say it to you, if you let them, or you can simply say it to yourself tonight, in whatever room you happen to be sitting in. Wherever you are tonight, whatever the number looks like when you check it, you did not fail to reach some finish line. There was no finish line. There was only ever the sentence you were waiting for someone to say to you, and now you've heard it. If this story gave you even a single moment of that stillness, there are more waiting for you here. Next time, I'll tell you about a king who traded his crown for a single night of sleep and what he asked for in return when he woke. Until then, walk gently and hold loosely.